Today I'm going to be talking about some very basic syntax for how to use loops in Stata. Loops will come up pretty often. They can be very useful for a number of reasons. They actually have some uses that are pretty difficult to get out of other languages, but that pop up very easily in Stata. And so I find there's actually some places where you'd use loops in Stata where you might not be able to, at least not easily, in other packages or even actual programming languages. So there's two main types of loops in Stata. The foreach loop and the forvalues loop. There's also a while loop, but we're not going to be talking about that. That doesn't come up super often in Stata, at least in my experience. And if you're interested, you can look up help while. But I'm going to be focusing on the for loops, both foreach and forvalues. So forvalues, I'll start with the first. It's the easiest one. And basically forvalues, what it does is it loops over a predefined set of numbers. What I might get is forvalues I. So I'm gonna decide a loop over with a variable I as the thing that counts the number of loops, and I'm going to store in the value I. Let's say I'm going to store the numbers from 1 to 10. And what this is saying is that I'm going to start at 1, I'm going to end up at 10, and I'm going to take one step in between each time. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to use an open curly brace, and then I'm going to let's just display the value of I. And so I'm going to refer to I here using the standard local variable syntax. Over here on the left, what I have is a left quote. This is usually above the tab key on the left of your keyboard. And then over here, I just have a regular single apostrophe. It's usually on the same button as the quote key. So I'm going to display that. I'm going to close it with another curly brace, and then that'll display 1 to 10 for me. Now what I can do instead is I can change where I'm going. I could go 1 to 100. Maybe instead I want to take a different step size. So maybe I want to count by 2s. So I'm going to change that to a 2. Display I. Go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Simple enough. Something to remember with this, and also in general as you're using loops, is that when you're using this local variable statement, what Stata is doing is it's literally taking the value of I and it's writing it to that line, and then it's executing that line. So it starts out, it says, okay, I is equal to 1. Great. Okay, I know that I is equal to 1. Okay, then I want to write display I. Okay, what is I? Well, I is 1. And then it writes that out. You can display 1. Okay. This doesn't seem like it's important. It is something to keep in mind a little bit because it can come up sometimes that it's not a number in there. It is writing the value of the variable almost as a string to the command line, and then it's executing that line. And it can come up in situations like this. So let's say I do forvalues. Say I want to loop from -3 to -5. I want to go -3, -4, -5. Okay, and I want to display oops. I have to tell it what to loop over. Oh, did it again. Let's call it t this time. Why not? This time I want to display t squared. Okay, so think about what this is going to do. Okay. In most languages, what this would do is it would take t and it would say, okay, t is -3. What's -3 squared? It's 9, right? But that's not what Stata is going to do. What Stata is going to do is it's going to take this 3 and it's going to replace it with the value of t, which is -3. And this is not -3 squared. This is -3 squared, right? So what we're going to get here is negative 9, 16, and 25, as opposed to what we might expect, which is 9, 16, and 25. Right? So just something to keep in mind. There are some ways around this, but I like this local syntax because it really reminds you what the local variables are. Anyway, so that's forvalues. That's basically all that it is. You're counting over a range of numbers. It goes in order, takes interval steps. Simple enough. Next up, we have foreach. Now foreach has a couple different variants of itself, but the basic idea here is that we are looping over strings instead of over numbers. So let's say for each x in. So one thing to notice. So first of all, we have an equal sign here up here for forvalues. For each, it's an in. So for each x in, let's say hi, bye, and aloha, value of x. Simple enough, right? Loops over these strings, prints it out. This is the same sort of thing that you might do. So again, the thing to remember here is that it is actually executing the code. It's filling in the value of x, and then it's executing the code. This means that it's very easy, for example, and this is one of the nice things I like about Stata. It's very easy to build code using a loop. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to do a binary regression with a bunch of different ways. So let's say I wanted to do a linear probability model and a probit and a logit. So I could say for each, let's make it y this time, why not? For each y in regress, logit, and probit, I'm going to do y, and I'm going to regress y not being female on your mother's education. And it is a linear probability model, then as a logit, then as a probit, right? So I built the code each time, right? I literally filled in this value right here with the thing that I'm looping over. And so I could build the code. It doesn't need to be treated as a value, right? I can actually build the code. Or for example, maybe I want to create a variable, x underscore high and x underscore by. I could do something like that. Maybe I want to take this regression and I want to outreg each of those to its own file with its own file name. I could do something like outreg2 using output underscore y, and that'll tell me whether I was using regress or logit or probit for that particular one. And I won't run that. Let's. So that works as well. So that's for each. Another nice version of use of for each is you can loop over variables very easily. And this is very nice because you don't actually have to write out all the variables. You can use asterisks or things like that. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to loop over all of these race variables. So what I could do is I could do for each x. Now here's where it gets strange, of var list. So remember, up here, when we did the first for each, it was in, for each y in. But now we're doing a variable list, and instead of in, we're using of. So for each x of var list, and I'm just going to say r underscore star, and that'll cover all of these variables that start with r underscore star. And I'm just going to summarize them. Why not? Easy enough. And there are, of course, many other ways to refer to groups of variables. So maybe I want to summarize just basically everything, or do something to everything, or I want to do everything to the variables from class rank to last BA. And that just will go through every variable in the order that they currently are in the data set, and it will do whatever I want to. And so this will work as well. I won't actually run it, but that's how you do it. Another cool thing that you can do with for each is to loop over all the values of a variable. So let's say down here I have this college major variable. Look at it, I have a bunch of different values, okay? And I want to loop over each of those values and maybe do something with them. So maybe I want to summarize, all the, maybe I want to summarize class rank for each major that people had. So what I can do is I can use the levels of command. So I'm going to do levels of, and this is going to return to me all the different values of college major, values of col maj. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to store the results of all these levels to a local variable. And I'm going to call this, let's say, majors. Okay, so it'll go through, gives me all the values of college major. That I have strings here, but these are just labels. These are actually 1 through 8. So now I have 1 through 8 stored in majors. And that doesn't seem like it would actually need this whole procedure, but maybe I had a string variable, or I had like a state code or something like that. And then this would save me a lot of time. So then I can loop over all these different values. So I'm going to do for each x in. Again, remember we're using in here because I'm looping over strings. I'm not looping over a variable list. Majors, and then I can do whatever I want. Maybe I just want to list out all the majors that I have. So let's do display. There we go. And I can list them out. I can do all sorts of things, right? If I wanted to, that's right. We said I wanted to summarize class rank. So sum class rank if equals x. And there we go. So that basically does it for the basic use of loops. At this point, beyond that, it really just comes down to, very carefully writing the code that goes in the loops. You could nest loops if you want. You could, first, you could have for each, for values, I equals 0 to 1, and then for each x in majors, and then you could, summarize the class rank for people in a particular major and a particular gender, right? And then the other gender. So you could nest loops like that. You can put all sorts of code in the loops, everything out properly. And that's basically it.